Welcome to my best campaign. Today we're talking to Sneaker Steve Patiño. And if his name wasn't a giveaway, Sneaker Steve is an icon in the footwear industry. So, from his teen years working in Queens at a local shoe store in exchange for shoes, to being one of the highest paid footwear executives in America, and usually the only Latino at the table, from what I understand, he has negotiated industry shifting deals in action sports, and he's touched pretty much every part of the shoe business. So now he's using his name and his network for good. He's developed the world's first fully sustainable clog under his footwear tech brand, Aless Gray, which is already earning a cult following, including people on the Monday team. He did it with a totally ethical and sustainable supply chain, and he thinks this is the future of footwear. So today we're going to hear stories from his just long and incredible 25 years of growing and starting brands and the landmark moments that push those brands to global success. So let's get right in. Steve, how did you get into the world of shoes and brands? Tell us your origin story.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for that intro. It was incredible to hear it. When you hear like a breath of work after you've been doing it for so long, it feels amazing. As a recap, so thank you. I'm honored to be on the podcast today. And the way I got in is exactly like you said. I started working for free at my local sneaker shop, and what that meant was that basically one day the owner of the store didn't have someone to work, and he was putting out a sign and I said, I'll take the job. I'll work basically. Just give me a free pair of sneakers. And my goal at high school at that time, which sounds pretty silly, but was just to start every single Monday with a new pair of sneakers. And that's how I got into the industry when I was 16.
And so, where did it go from there? How did you get from there to being a senior executive at DC Shoes?
Yeah. So basically, what happens, at that specific time was a really particular time in New York City where there was a lot of undercurrents in culture, and I think this is really cool for like any of the listeners, right? Whether you're a marketing executive or you're ground roots and you're just starting in your career, there's power in that, right? So because I was at the time a teenager, and there was a lot of cultural shifts where we were wearing technical outerwear to areas that we didn't have any places to wear technical outerwear. So think of it, I'm growing in an urban city in New York City, in Queens, the farthest away from the outdoors that you can even imagine. It's literally I'm living in a concrete jungle, but I'm wearing North Face and Ace Solo. So to answer the question, really what happened was that my love for technical outerwear really allowed me to a couple of things that are very special happened. One was this culture where a lot of kids were wearing this technical outerwear in the city. And then secondly, I was bringing that to Queens for the first time. And because of that, we would have to convince North Face or Dolomite or A Solo or Solomon or Gravis at the time or even DC Shoes to be like, why do you want to carry this technical in Queens? What? Like, it didn't make sense. And what happened is that that store became one of the most successful stores per square foot in an entire region. We were the first Nike SB store to carry limited edition shoes like the prestigious Heineken Dunk or the De La Soul Dunk. We were the only ones. There was only 5 stores in all of New York, which was Supreme. We were the only one for Queens. So we built this really cult following. And the reason why I got into DC was a couple of reasons. So one, I got on their spotlight or radar because they thought we were backdooring the shoes. They thought that we were selling them off the back of a trunk because they've never seen this kind of volume. So if you think about it, this is actually a great parallel between, let's call it the Nikes of the world, the Adis of the world, and then you have your skate companies like a DC Shoes. And now, of course, you have your Hokas and your On Runnings. Back then, it was really just like the Nikes, it's the more traditional athletic, and then, skate brands. The athletic brands, they can sell millions and millions of dollars of product really fast, especially if they have urban distribution in the cities. Skateboard companies, you sell to a skate shop, you might sell 12 pairs of shoes. The kids will wear those shoes till they're completely destroyed and beat up, till they're literally like falling apart at the seams. And then they go buy another skate shoe. This is completely the opposite of the 90s and the urban trends where you basically wore your white Air Forces ones. They had to be completely spotless and all white. So these trends where the kids were buying more sneakers, a kid could have 20, 30, 50 pairs of sneakers, where a skater might buy one or two a year. So what happened is that they thought we were either backdooring illegally the shoes, and so they came unannounced to the store, and they just sat down in the store and they watched me sell. So a shipment came in from UPS and they saw me sell about 14 pairs of shoes in about 40 minutes. They weren't even out the boxes yet. That was the attention that we grabbed. They were just like, what is, like, they never seen anything like this. So the full circle story is that when Quicksilver purchased DC, they hired me to do a presentation in front of 50 to 60 of their entire staff. And I knocked it out the park. And their executives that came on from Nike to DC said, "Hey, Steve, would you like to do this again?" And that's how the story came. And then really quickly from that, I moved to San Diego and became the first, worked my way up and became the first global director of DC Shoes during the largest growth in the company's history. It was incredible. Absolutely incredible.
We're going to come back to DC, but I want to know, do you think the success was a result of just like a cultural trend of movement of people wanting to have the freshest kicks, or was it something that you were doing specifically to move products so efficiently?
Yeah, I think it was that the culture of sneakers has always been very competitive from the consumer standpoint, not only from the brand standpoint, but people in New York at that time wanted to be different. They wanted to have something fresh. They wanted to have something new. So they were very, very early adopters. And my store was known for that, for being the earliest of adopters. And what happened in that store was that I was also responsible for putting the deal together between DC Shoes and New Era cap company, which is why you see a Supreme hat, an Undefeated hat, a DC Shoes hat. And that became a $60 million separate business unit for New Era, which then started their first offices in California through the deal that I created when I was 22 years old in New York. So because of these two things of the power of New York City at that time and the type of deals and infrastructure that I was creating, they came to me and they were just like, look, Steve, we really see a big opportunity in the East Coast. We would love for you to head up this new division for us based on our new expansion goals. So it was a cultural phenomenon, but it was really, we did something really special in that store that hadn't been done yet before anybody else.
Let's dive into your time at DC. So there was some pretty incredible growth in the, tens of millions during your time there. And you were at the helm of a bunch of really cool initiatives. If you could trace it back to one epic moment that really put DC in the spotlight, what do you think that moment would be?
I mean, from a business standpoint, I think it has to be when Rob and Big were on MTV, because it became this incredible mix of pop culture, MTV, skate culture, and then this new emerging consumer in the American market. Um, and that combination, this very unique, powerful combination with MTV at that time, was something that no one had ever seen. And by being able to have DC basically have a 30-minute commercial on television was incredible. And the company grew hundreds of millions of dollars during that time. So I think that was probably the biggest commercial success that the company had.
Yeah, tell me more about that. So, I'm in Canada. I didn't grow up with MTV, but I followed a bit of skateboarding. So I was loosely aware of what was going on. But for those that don't know, tell us what Robin Big is and why it was such a significant moment culturally.
I think because Robin Big was a show on MTV, so MTV stands for music television, and it was almost like in the beginning of MTV was very about future or counterculture, right? It was like your parents didn't want you to listen to MTV, so of course you as a kid you went home and you watched MTV. This is where the first videos broke many times, and then it became very kind of soft and commercial after. But in the beginning of MTV, that's what it was known for. And then when they started to create programming like Rob and Big, so Rob is really interesting because Rob is probably like 5'5", 5'6" in height, so he's not so big, but he has this larger than life character. And then you have Big, which is a security guard who is actually larger than life. Rest in peace to him. But he's like 6'6", if not bigger. 250, 300 pounds. And this just the juxtaposition between Rob and Big was visually just really fun. And then they were absolutely hilarious. I mean, skateboarders are so quirky, they're so different. But DC Shoes had this really interesting kind of like hip hop approach. I think they weren't very like emo or like grungy like some of the skate brands. They were, I would say, they were more hip hop inclined, and definitely arts. They were very big into the arts, so, and car culture. So it was really cool, and they just were magic. They were magic on the screen.
So Rob, we're talking about Rob Dyrdek,
Correct.
pro skateboarder, big figure in MTV, and went on to have additional television shows. Was just a regular feature. How did that partnership happen? How did you negotiate that partnership, and what was the commitment? How did DC show up in that space?
Yeah, so that was really, Rob has been a part of DC since the beginning. And I think that the what I've learned a lot in terms of skateboarding culture and skateboarding business is that it's very entrepreneurial. The skaters might seem like, they're nonchalant or they don't talk much sometimes, right? And I thought that that was really incredible, the way that they thought about business. And he was able to, I think DC, because of the growth and leaning into culture and hip hop and music and art and cars, Rob had a home already in the Hollywood Hills. So these guys weren't your typical, like, I wouldn't say like the the grungier emo skater. It was like the diamond chain, completely decked out car, Hollywood Hills, partying, at the best clubs. It was a very different DC culture was very different in that sense. It is it's not for everyone. It is what it is, right? That was DC at that time, and so he was able to really bring these connections in Hollywood, and I thought there's big power in that as well, right? Because now you're not only bringing skate culture, but you have Hollywood and now MTV, and then you have this ability to like really promote and market your brand in a completely different way.
Yeah. So Rob's a sponsored skateboarder in the DC family. When he brings about his show, is it just that he's already wearing the gear and it's showing up, or did you have an additional investment in the show to guarantee different appearances?
Yeah, no, no. So I think, I mean, those deals were done by him and the founders of DC with MTV, and they were able to negotiate it where Rob was able to wear DC. So they were brilliant in that. The fact that it wasn't blurred out, you could literally see DC everywhere, which was incredible.
So then what does that do for a brand? Rob wears a DC hat in a show. What's the impact on sales, on the brand? How did you see it show up?
Oh, immediate. This is just, it turns into hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of sales globally because everyone, they say that the one thing that the American culture has, which is the most powerful, is our culture, right? So our culture is what we export. People, no matter where you're at, what country, we export culture. And that holds a lot of weight. So, it wasn't even just a US expansion or acceleration of business, it was global. The whole world was watching it.
It feels like something that's so unique to the MTV era. Do you see anything comparable happening nowadays? Like, do you think it's possible to scale a brand that quickly through a medium the way that we could back then?
Yeah, I think it's just done differently, right? So now it's probably done on TikTok, it's done on YouTube, where some of the user generated content that's having millions and millions of views, they're just doing it on a different platform, and now it's mobile, right? So it's on your phone. You're watching this content. If you look at what Mr. Beast has done, if you look at what Bad Bunny has done, if you look at even on the D'Amelio side, like the deals that they're creating for their two sisters, there's just so much there, and it's just a different platform, right? And I think it's more spread, where before it was like you watch TV and then you watch cable TV. Now you have multiple mediums of how to do that and actually have those kind of eyeballs as well. So I think companies are doing it now. If you look at what Messi has done with Inter Miami, right? The deals between, you're bringing Apple, Adidas, and Inter Miami, like these revolutionary deals that are happening is just at a completely different scale. And there's always opportunity, which I really love the Messi deal because it shows you that creatively through marketing and through deal making, because you would never think that Apple would be investing with Adidas and then, also Inter Miami and the David Beckham group. It almost doesn't even make sense. What do you mean Adidas is doing a deal with with Apple? But this is the way that they're looking at the world in a new way. So I'm always fascinated by that from a marketing and business perspective.
Yeah. You've done a lot of deals in your career. You know, you and I have talked in the past about all the different celebrity placements you've done in product. When you look at that messy deal, for example, what does it take to make partnerships like that happen? How do they even start?
I think it's thinking it up, right? So, I just watched the Beckham documentary, and you see how he took, he's like, well, do I want to be one of the top players in Europe, which is completely successful? Or do I want to take this jump into this new country and maybe be the face of something that doesn't have, as one that's 10% as big as where I'm at, right? And if you think of the long game, he was able to take a long game approach, and now everyone's looking at Beckham like he's completely brilliant, right? Because of what he's done by bringing Messi. But he was a joke when he was like, "What? You're going to the U.S. to they don't even call it football. We call it soccer. Like it's like what? What are you? It's so anti thinking. It's so anti the grain or like where it's going. But it's these kind of deals that in the long term could turn out into what it is now. And now the whole world is watching, and everyone knows that, this is where it's at. And you think of it like the Roger Federer, has made more money with on running than his whole tennis career. So it's completely different ways of positioning. And I think if you think about it, it's collaboration, right? As an athlete or a brand ambassador, and a company, it's collaboration and partnership is what creates these marketing or business opportunities at its simplest form.
Who do you think, in your experience, who do you think is usually driving those deals? Is it usually coming brand side, or is it the star or the athlete that's driving it?
I think it's brand and agency side, right? It's these people that are in the back just looking, and they're pitching, right? I don't think it was, and I don't know this firsthand, but just from all of the dealings that I do every single day, I think it was probably pitched from the business side saying, hey, look, we spoke with Apple. They're interested. Adidas, of course, this is what the deal could be like. And then let's bring this to Messi's team to review. And let's give him a deal that he cannot say no to. I think that's the way I've seen it typically happen.
When you think about it, what makes partnerships like that, the ones you've negotiated or been a part of, and the ones you see and admire, what makes those types of partnerships really successful?
Well, vision, right? It's vision, and it has to be win-win, and it has to be clear, right? So when you look at the deal, that MTV did at that time, because they were selling ad time, right? So if you have all these kids and all these people now watching this show, they're like, we're going to make the money on the ad side. We don't care if you wear DC shoes, or you're going to make your money regardless. So to answer that, the short answer is that it has to be win-win. And when you say it out loud, it's so like a given, right? But a lot of people don't. And when you have these deals and you're creative, to Messi, he probably looked at it as like, wow, like this is an incredible deal, and I can own the league, right? Like there was a stat that he makes probably, you know, so much more money than any of the other players because of who he is, and he has a different upside.
Looking back on those days, you worked so much with Rob. If I'm not mistaken, you also did some deals with Travis Barker. You've done deals with some big name rappers and other musicians. Skaters and musicians can be a little unpredictable, and often the whole point of those worlds is to be countercultural. So it inherently must come with some risk for brands. How did you manage those risks, and were there any major kind of pitfalls that you hit along the way?
Yeah, and I think, and luckily, I didn't have to do those deals directly. Like I wasn't on the marketing side, but I could feel the pressure on my marketing teams. They were like, "Oh my God, these contracts are just, to put in a skate, it's gnarly, right? Like these contracts are no joke." I was on the product and sales side, so I was creating the product. So my job was to create product that was exciting, that could be sold into the lifestyle and arts categories, and then trickle down into main line as we kind of like go from like top down. So I didn't have that kind of pressure on me, which was great. But I think that when you look at just the business in general, you have to have people that have the experience. And one thing is that DC at that time had world class teams, and that was the difference. They really had those teams to be able to create that had experience working at that level with those level contracts.
Mm. Is there anything you would have done differently if you were going to go back and do it all over again?
I think for me, I would have negotiated the New Era deal. I didn't negotiate equity or a percentage in that deal because I was 22 years old, so I'd never done something like that. I didn't know that. I didn't understand my power at 22 years old, right? So there was no way for me to fathom that my so this is what I did. I basically saw an opportunity and I connected two of the largest organizations to create a deal together. Now
And this
is
is before DC, yeah?
this is before I was even hired, right? This is me at 22 years old. Now saying it out loud on the podcast, of course I'm going to put together a deal, right? I'm built into the deal because I'm putting together these two huge entities together. At that time, I could not fathom that that was going to turn into a $70 million independent business unit from just that connection. That was yearly revenue. So, you know, I think that's what I would have done differently. And I think that that's a part of where, I look at entrepreneurs and I always share my story and I always tell them, like, when you have these opportunities, I always tell the youth is like, really understand your power, not just because you are young and you don't have the experience. One connection, one deal can change your life forever. So always be in that present moment and understand that you have power. And when you put together these connections or these introductions, get around people that can help you build them out. Because sometimes you just want to do it because you're a nice person, or you say, oh yeah, of course, I'll help you. I'll connect you to this person. But not understanding that there's huge business potential for yourself and wealth that could be created. So I always want to share that to anyone that's young or just anyone in general.
My Best Campaign is brought to you by Monday Creative. Through cultural research and audience insights, brand and marketing strategy, and world-class creative execution, we build brands that enhance human potential. Our real purpose at Monday is to seduce people into the outdoors. So we work with active, outdoor, and wellness brands that care for the planet and want more people to connect with health, nature, and movement. Find us at mondaycreative.co.
Let's talk about your power because you haven't just built other people's brands. You've built your own brands. You started in, I think, junior high, building your own t-shirt brand that got picked up by some major retailers. Your own shoe brand, Android has been seen on some pretty big names, and now a less gray. So I'm curious, as you're building this new brand with a really interesting focus on sustainability, which is quite different from that flashy world of kind of skate and hype and celebrity that you've come from, what are the lessons you're bringing from that past to this new business?
Yeah, I think that, all of that business was really done focusing on just the consumer side, right? Like making, how do you get more people to buy more things, right? Well, that's what it was really about, and creating a functional product that more people can buy. This business model for Les Gray was very different. So kind of like after DC, we had Androdome, which is still in business till today, proudly. And we also had where I moved to China. So I was able to see where 90% of all footwear is made. 21 billion pairs of shoes are made in Asia right now, which is 90%. So 9 out of 10 of every shoe that anyone wears in the world is made in Asia. And having a first row seat to that and seeing in a lot of instances just how bad the waste is and how manufacturing is, that really is what allowed me to start at Less Great. Was like kind of this aha moment where when after leaving China, I spent 10 years focusing on manufacturing in Italy and Europe and Mexico and seeing how you could create product in a better way. And I had this kind of epiphany and I said, well, what if I'm able to create product where I don't hurt the land and I don't hurt the environment and I don't hurt the people that are making the shoes, but then I use technology and innovation and craftsmanship from Europe and bring shoes that are made to America, and then also bring the highest sustainability standards that are being led from Europe, but bringing that to the US market, the North American market, to Canada, and to the rest of the world. So it's really this what if. And that's where Les Gray started. So Les Gray, when my wife was pregnant with our son Grayson, I just told her, I said, look, I'm not happy. I want to have a company that's purpose driven, and I have no one to point the finger to because I'm the president and one of the co-founders of the company. So I can't, play victim. And so I basically kind of just looked myself in the face and in the mirror and just said, look, if you really want to create a purpose driven company, you have to start it. So we named the company Les Gray after our son, and really went on this mission to manufacture in a completely different way, because the science and the materials are there already, the technology is there. It's just that CEOs from the top down are not choosing to make these decisions and have non-negotiables for their business. And I think that because we're a purpose-driven business with this very, very clear set of non-negotiables, is that we've been able to really, penetrate the market in such a fast way, and that's why the business is accelerating so fast. Because people are just like, Steve, I don't know how you figured this out. And I'm just, well, and I tell them, it's like, well, it took me 30 years, first of all. And, we have these non-negotiables. So we don't hurt, we look to create a business that doesn't hurt people, the planet, or animals. And that's really it. And it's just like, can you create a business model after that? And, I looked at Patagonia as one of the benchmarks of the North Stars of businesses that can, right? And you can do it, and it's there. So that's really where we're at.
Tell me how you're doing it, because you are creating a product, you're selling at major retailers like Foot Locker and REI and Nordstrom. What about the product is different?
Yeah, so I think the biggest difference is that we engineer our product in Italy, and then we use a single input material. So typically it takes up to 65 to 75 different pieces, right? If you think of to make one shoe. And the amount of waste that's created there is substantial. So if you look at, like, to make one leather shoe, it takes up 8,000 liters of water. So that's in traditional manufacturing. What we are future focused is, what is the next generation of bio-based materials. So instead of 65 materials, we just use one. Instead of manufacturing in Asia, we manufacture in North America locally. So we save all of the carbon emissions from transportation, because there's no ships. We don't need any ships to produce our goods. And then we plant a tree to offset the rest of the emissions from that product. And then we're part of the top 2 to 3% companies in the world that do bio-based products. So we're going away from traditional petroleum. And this is really the start of where we see a business model that's created based on, really, it's like, we took apart the supply chain. We took my 30 years of experience and said, what if we were able to re-engineer or reverse engineer a new supply chain, a new way of manufacturing, and make sustainable style simple from every single level, from the supply chain to the product offering. And that's really the big differences. And then we do that with third-party audited sustainable certification. So when our entire supply chain, we're thinking beyond sustainability, we're thinking about impact across the entire supply chain. So from the biomass, the area where the product is made, to the workers and how they're treated, to the inputs, making sure that they're non-toxic, to the manufacturing process. Our shoes are made in 8 minutes with zero water waste. And then locally in North America, where we have a supply chain that's 5 to 7 times faster than traditional supply chains, through this concept that we call global local. So a lot of thought, a lot of clear decisions, and it's working.
So the shoes are engineered in Italy, but they're actually being made in the USA.
In Mexico, out of North
Mexico.
America.
Okay. Okay, out of North America. Great. And then what happens when you go international? Like, let's say you start selling in China, can you just manufacture whatever shoes are needed in each country?
So we have three points of manufacturing. So we manufacture in Mexico for North America, we manufacture in Italy for all of Europe, and now Vietnam for all of Asia. So that everywhere, that's where the global local supply chain.
So really reducing those transportation costs.
And what happens is that then when you reduce the transportation costs, also reduces import costs, and for a lot of the regions. And what we saw is that opportunities to take that model, and we also have no boxes. So we've also stripped down boxes. All we do now is have recycled poly bag and a hanger for the shoe. So it's just really just completely stripping down any excess waste to everything that's happening in terms of all of our product and our supply chain.
hmm And the that bio-based material. So a lot of people that aren't in our industry who don't know this, most of the product that comes from our shoes, especially if they're not leather-based, are derived from oil. But there's a whole bunch of new technology that's allowing us to derive oil from plants, which is what you're doing, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And then I know you spent a lot of time also thinking about end of life for these products. What happens when I'm done with wearing my less gray clogs?
Yeah, so where I'm really excited about the future is that right now, even if you're bio-based, so right now we're at 30% bio-based content for our product. So really focusing on that transition. For next year, 2 weeks ago, I just announced for the first time publicly that we're launching the world's first 100% biodegradable product in our category that is able to be compostable within 6 months and also completely biodegradable in seawater for the first time ever in our category. And we're doing this with an incredible material science company, bringing this to market so that we can end the plastic waste crisis in our category of footwear for the first time ever.
I love that. That speaks right to my heart. So you've become kind of this environmental spokesperson, but your history has been in these cool, big celebrity partnerships. That's just sort of marked your entire career. Are you bringing that partnership model to a less gray?
No, you know what? It's almost like I look at it as my wife asks me all the time about this, and then like the shoes that I did were for like Justin Bieber, Lewis Hamilton, LeBron James, the biggest artists have even wore our clothing or our shoes, Bad Bunny, like so that world for me at that chapter in my life was based on my consciousness and also I would say education or knowledge. And I only knew so much. And what happened is that once I found out how bad manufacturing was, I couldn't look back. And then, it's almost like sometimes it's better to be, what do they say? It's like ignorance is bliss, you know. And then once I knew, I was just like, oh, I can't go back, right? So I can't go back to making those decisions where it's just make cool product and sell it. It's not where I'm at, in my life and in my career. So, and then what also fills me with joy and passion is that instead of making product for celebrities uh, and and influencers or people that just want beautiful product, I'm focusing more on the need. So people that need functional shoes. So really focusing on the frontline industries, which represent 2 billion frontline workers around the world, right? So which over index and many times as female. So just in the US, it's 62% female, which are mostly underpaid, unseen, um, underrepresented, underserved, and just it's bad. And for me, I always look at it as like, okay, how can I create a product that somebody actually needs? That if I can create, happiness and comfort and safety in someone's life, like somebody that works at whether you're a nurse or you work at a hospital or you're a barista at Starbucks or you work at a supermarket or a warehouse, these are the people who are the backbone of society globally. And what if I'm able to create a product that's affordable, that's safe, that's comfortable for them? That to me is exhilarating because I wake up and I'm like, wow, I've had impact in people's life and I didn't do it in a way where it's also damaging to the environment for future generations. So it's like I'm just in this like beautiful aha moment of the business model of my goals for the company, and I'm really happy. I'm in a really good space.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It's like you can't lean on your old bag of tricks that you've always had in the past because it just doesn't align with our values. So if you can't then just go to your default, like, oh, I know I can just like put this product on this celebrity, how are you gaining exposure for the brand?
So a couple of ways we do it in a different way. So you will still have like say for example like our partnership with REI, um, which came through some of your network and your friends. So thank you so much for that, for you and the Monday crew and Janine, and really bringing this product to life for the first time. Where I'm bringing them to them the highest quality functional product in this category, and they're just like Steve. We're going to hold your hand and make sure you succeed, right? Because you have something really special that could benefit the world. And So with them, they have 22, 23 million members that are part of REI. They've been around, for many, many years. You're looking at like 80 plus years. And for them, it's just an incredible retailer that's supporting us. We've also just got mentioned as the 9 brands changing the face of the outdoor industry. I'm one of the only Latino founders in all of footwear. So for me, not only are we bringing a completely fresh perspective, we're bringing representation, we're bringing sustainability, and we're really leveraging these opportunities between Nordstrom and REI and our other retailers to tell our stories. And then we work with incredible, whether it be doctors or chefs. A lot of these doctors, chefs, they have hundreds, thousands, not millions of followers. And the difference between, when a doctor says something and they say, well, I'm wearing these shoes and I love them, to their hundreds of thousands of followers, their community of medical professionals are like, they're really paying attention because they need this product. It's not like, oh, I want to look cool, I want the product. This is a need product, a function first product. And that's how we're being able to really draw in the crowd.
Yeah, so you're really leaning into those retail partnerships instead of the celebrity partnerships and going straight to the source, the people that need the
Yeah. So they could
product.
create, user generated content, which is actually even converting higher than just regular content.
Yeah, that's probably a good segue to my next question, which is looking at the bigger picture. What trends are you seeing in marketing and in the brands that you love to follow? Where do you think marketing's headed right now?
I think it's getting realer than ever. User generated content is really converting 7 to 12 times faster than just branded content, because people rather see someone that they trust or follow. If they make a reference or referral, you're more likely to purchase that than if the brand tells you directly. So I think that where everything goes, when I look at the through line of everything in marketing, is truth, right? Gen Z and the younger. So if you look at millennials, Gen Z, uh, they want the truth, right? So they're sifting through everything. They don't want to be marketed to. They want the truth, and if you can give them the truth, because that's all they want, then you're going to help them make a more educated decision, and they're going to be your biggest advocate. So I think the more that you're transparent as a company, and that I think that's why a lot of I think like the lo-fi marketing or lo-fi content is working, because it's not this crazy polished, you know, um, basically advertising ad. It's no, this is the product, this is what it does. I'm a human, you're a human. I use this and it helps me. I think it can help you too, and that's it. And everything else, if it becomes too polished or too clean, or it goes, they just swipe away and it goes over their head and they're like, no, you're trying to advertise to me.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the outcomes of the pandemic in a big way too. Like we just saw that authenticity is everything. Steve, you have a huge network, bigger than anyone I know. You brush shoulders with a lot of people. I saw on your Instagram this weekend that you were sitting next to Arnold Schwarzenegger at an event. So, and you're really good about pulling in the right people at the right time. So I'm guessing you've gotten a lot of advice from people over the years. What is the best piece of marketing or branding advice that you've ever been given?
I really love the Patagonia approach of don't buy my product, buy less of my product, buy quality, right? So this idea, this new thinking that we're like, even with the Let's Grade, we talked about, even with Monday, right? A, a shoe can help you not have to buy 2 more shoes. So we're making a better product that can save you 2 shoes or 3 shoes. I'd rather you buy a less great product that is high quality than having to buy 3 or 4 shoes that are going to fall apart. And this is this new communication of quality. And I think it's beyond just thinking like fast and slow fashion. It's thinking quality, right? Like I think of Dyson and I look at Tesla and I look at Patagonia. They're creating the best products in the world that where people can actually use them for a long time. And I love that. I love this idea of like focusing on quality, longevity, so you buy less. I think that's the biggest brilliant messaging that I've got in a long time. That resonates with me.
Less but better. Okay, last question for you, Steve, before we wrap up. What's coming down the line for a Less Gray? What are you most excited about that's on the horizon?
What I'm most excited about is being able to finally solve and create a solution for the plastic crisis that we have in this world. It's happening faster than I thought. I didn't think we were going to get there this fast, but we'll have it by next year already. And I'm really excited for that. I think that changes the world. And, for me to be able to have a shoe where I can, put my shoes into a home compost with my son and see that I can actually have a product that can go back into the earth, and that the microorganisms can eat it up and it goes right back for the first time and not have to be here for 50 to 100 years. Creating this kind of solution to one of the biggest problems in the world is incredibly exciting for me. So I think that's one of the most exciting things that for me, and the fact that I can provide this to the frontline workers around the world.
Yeah, I'm here for that. Where can people find you online if they want to follow along on the journey?
So at LS Gray, you can follow me on LinkedIn. So Sneaker Steve Patiño on LinkedIn, or at Sneaker Steve. Really easy.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Steve. I always get so energized talking to you. You have the best stories, and I appreciate you making the time today.
Thank you, Linda.